Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Universal Current Show. It is episode 9, and the title of the show is The Conquerors of Death. And it's just amazing to be here. And what we're going to talk about today is just really going to set a lot of things straight. The tone of the show today is definitely clarity, and we want people to experience everything they need to experience to understand why they're here, why what they've been through has happened, etc. And that will allow you to get into the state of maximum ascension and then the cycling of your energy. And the interesting part about this show, today we're going to talk about the Swadhisthana chakra, which is the chakra that's located in your navel. And this chakra has everything to do with exactly where we're at in our spiritual course. Of course, we're on level 2, and our ship is slightly hovering off the ground. And what we're doing is, in this series, The Universal Current, we're going to be bringing the step-by-step application of how to ascend and descend your vehicle. Remember, the energy must keep cycling. And it's interesting because the explanation of the Swadhisthana chakra is its function in the tree of life is to gather the different energies that have been created in the descent down the tree and to distribute them to Malkuth, the material world, where the energy can find physical expression. And this is just what we were talking about before on I think it was 2 shows ago, where the idea is once you go into the high state of consciousness, you can gather these fruits up and these gifts and talents and energies and essences, etc. And then your responsibility is to bring them down to the physical dualistic feet planes and to fertilize the soil that's there with these new strong seeds. And so it's very interesting because the entire length of our existence has been to make us stronger, and a lot of adversity that we're experiencing today is actually strengthening our mental, physical, ultimately our spiritual body. And so today's show, of course, is about conquering death entirely. So first you would have to know what death really is, and we, of course, uncovered to die means to split in two. Actually, let me get another recording started here to make sure that we do have a clear recording for the show. I'm also going to check in the chat box and see if everything is coming through clearly. If someone could text back and let me know if it's clear or not, that would be great, and I can get another internal recording started. And we do this at times because sometimes we have a problem with our sound and little pieces are missing at times, and so it's important to have a clear recording for people. So we're going to get that started. I'm just going to wait for somebody to respond in the chat box and say that we're loud and clear, and then we're going to get right into this. Okay, great. So, like I said, this show is going to be something I could see the people in the future listening to this show, because Earth, whether anyone can tell or not, has only 2 more lifetimes until everyone on the planet is pursuing spiritual growth. Because nothing else is going to be of importance. Once it's witnessed within a few individuals at large, then people are going to want to do that, just as they latch a hold of a desire at times. But this one's going to be different, just like some of the information coming across from the spiritual platform now. It's so different that it changes a person. It's more or less like an experience that the person is never the same after they're done. So even though many people may be attracted to the spirituality of the future and think that they're going to pull away from it at some point, that's not the case, because the spirituality is actually the complete circle of our existence. We did everything else. We did the metals, which are the Iron Age. And now we did the souls, the golden age, and now we enter an age where we actually collect all of what we've experienced and get the grand lesson. So that's actually what's happening. So where this navel chakra, it corresponds a great deal to water. And it's very important to understand that water is 800 times thicker than air. So when you're talking about density, for some people who've gone into the dream world and they notice it's very difficult to move, or it's very sluggish for them to move, it's because they're in a dense plane. And so if you can retrospect to exactly where you're at, because much of these worlds correspond to Earth. Remember, Earth is actually an entire universe inside of a fractal. So what we actually experience within our watery existence is a death because of the density. And the reason why it's called death in that tense is because all of the higher frequencies have everything to do with speed and vibration and sound. When you become dense, you actually start to work more with what we call in this world silence. And it's very interesting because when you really look at this, you'll see that how this plane in particular is set up, and this is what's been discovered from some of the hidden teachings that I've just recently uncovered, is that if we didn't have physicality, and this is what makes physicality so important, and this is also allows people to quell much of their ideas of, well, we're in a pen and there's enemies and they're attacking us and all that. You have to realize that, first of all, the purpose of physicality is as a spiritual being, if you have not gained the knowledge, because we are seeds, we're growing into trees. But when you're in the seed stage, there's many steps that you need to go through. So when you're going through those steps, you at times need anchors. This would be like if you're a spiritual being, you could blow off. When you become a physical being, you become more anchored. So what was going on here on Earth is the physical bodies were anchoring the souls to an actual reality why they were growing. Because if you did not have an anchor, this is what would happen. When you would go into your dream, you wouldn't wake up because there would be nothing to wake up to. And so what would proceed is a continuous dream. Now, for those who know how they dream now, spiritually, and how you control that dream, you can admit that you need more training there. Some people are very adept there. But just in general, most people need more training there. So if you happen to be in a dream that does not end, how long would that go on before you would forget you were dreaming? This is what is called the second death, is when you're in a dream, within a dream, within a dream, and you actually forget who you are, and then you start to operate on instinct, which is more like, for better lack of words, firmware installed into the reality to create the reality as it is, with the animals and their instincts, the elements and their instincts, meaning all the rules and laws that each of these different components have in order to keep them existing as separate. People need to understand, like, gold has a certain property and silver cannot take gold's property. So what happens is notice the terminology also being used. When you are a certain type of essence, no one can just take and claim you because it's you. And you remain and you hold that frequency. So it's important to realize where Earth is now in conjunction to those principles being how the whole reality is actually fluctuated. So the holographic nature to this reality, the reason why they call it a hologram, is not because it's not real and it's invisible, etc. It's much deeper. It's because every single part of the hologram contains the whole. So humans have all of their counterparts, or what they're made of, here with them. And that's why the animals are here with us, because they are the identification of a part of us that must remain here to connect into the frequency that makes us whole. Remember, all this stuff has to come from somewhere. So where it comes from is it comes from a collective frequency that we share with what we correspond to. And because we correspond to everything, everything is here. So it becomes now a sense of how much of this can you really absorb to understand how to traverse in these different bodies that you have. The beings that put us here put us here as their children to challenge us with all of this stage that we're in particularly has a lot to do with the animal, what the animalistic nature has to teach. Man's job is to lift the animal souls, basically the animal souls that are present here, and us showing the frequency example to them of what they should be, they graduate into becoming that. So basically there's a symbiotic relationship between man, woman, and the animals because it continues our spiritual growth, because our spiritual growth becomes the challenges of our animalistic nature and how we let it do things or how we control it, et cetera, et cetera. And so now you see why you're anchored to the reality. So who also was doing this was what we're calling today the Egyptians, which are the Commetans. Now the Commetans solved the problem of death. This is what the pyramid people were known to do. And how they did that, and this is in also the secret teachings, is what they did was they remained in stone. And this is another big mystery to the actual stone. Some call it the philosopher's stone, some call it the great arcanum, etc. But the stone was also the knowledge that if you did not have an anchor, let's say you lived through life and you didn't have certain things like children, according to the Harry Potter movie, a Horcrux, a mummy, or something of this nature, you could not bind back to this reality because everything in this reality is chained together, and that's what we're calling the DNA chain. So when you're now talking thousands of years after this knowledge was known, so there were individuals who were taking mummies, which corresponded to the frequency or biorhythm of entire lineages, and then feeding those mummies to dogs. And thus there are large groups of people here on this planet who don't know where they're from or who their origins are because they've been severed. There's also, I guess, the Harry Potter movie guy's name is Severus. So the reality becomes is that it went beyond what the ancient teachings were explaining because the ancient teachings were just explaining what was going on then. As we kept going quantum with our knowledge, there was a lack of recording because the world went all out into its phi phase, which is fighting and setting everything on fire and burning the libraries and burning people and everything's on fire. So because of that, we've been doused in the water. This already happened. There's been a gigantic baptism of the earth already again. They like to call that deluge. But people are still under the water. They think that they've come out of the water. No, you're still under the water because according to the humidity level of the atmosphere, if you were from, let's say, Venus, this would be like an ocean, the entire blue planet, because in the air the water would be thick. And why do you think so much rain comes down, etc.? So we know that this world is the navel. It has a lot to do with what they will call like the watery grave. And the reason is because there is such a higher frequency beyond this to even consider this as really living, and just to give it that title would not even fit the title. You would be like, okay, but that was dead because now that I'm fully activated, I see what living really is. But then that wasn't it. So it's not to be taken in a negative way. That's why it's good not to go into duality. So what happens is that we are not held to this earth by gravity. I'll say that again. Now people are like, well, wait a minute. We are not held to this earth by gravity. We're actually held to this earth by magnetism. And it is because of the pulling nature of this reality, because it corresponds to us. The flesh belongs to earth. It is the animals. It is the essence of this earth, the elements. It is the minerals, etc. We are basically binded to it. And that's why when you go to sleep, in most cases, if you can control the dream or you see yourself, the greatest desire is to fly. Because at that point, you have no ground. You have no physicality. So you're ready to fly off because that is your other state. So this all becomes so important to understand these days, because that's why all of these comets keep passing, because they're leaving in the comet's trail. It leaves a essence or an energy that actually changes our world. And that's why, after they kept announcing the Elenin and all of these different comets coming across, all of a sudden the world started to go into the occupy everything phase, the riot phase, etc. Because the comets, they don't hit another planet is almost like you trying to hit some wrestler in the mouth or some MMA fighter in the mouth. You're not just going to hit a planet and get away with it. So comets, they're not coming to hit Earth. They pass by, and in their tail, they bring all of the essence of where they just were. And so the reality of waking up is really those comets. They woke up. That's why they're comets now. They're like, hey man, let me speed through this thing instead of staying stationary on a rock. Would you like to be a large moving object through the cosmos rather than one that's magnetized to the ground because you're still learning Animal Planet? Even Dr. Blair was already saying it. Every now and then he would mention it. Well, first, this planet was really an Animal Planet. So let me explain to you what happened. When the young souls, the seedlings, were seeded onto the planet, it was already deemed that they would take on the animalistic traits that corresponded to this planet. And those animalistic traits, so it's almost very easy to say that the animals here are more or less a byproduct of the soul that is in us. And that is what the missing link really is. The missing link is, why do human beings reason, think, build, sleep, get angry, upset, pause, talk, kill, have joy, and have all of this stuff while the animals are still on instinct? So, and then you do have people making gestures now. They're saying, well, animals are actually smarter than people. Well, that's now maybe. But definitely, if you're looking at it from a real level, animals are not smarter than people. People have become endowed with the higher state of intellect now. This higher state of intellect was hidden in the mysteries as the fire given to physicality from Prometheus. Now you actually get what the story of Lucifer, the pentagram, is really about. It's about light coming in to physicality, or souls coming in to physical fleshly beings. And they call this, they say that it's a baptism of water and by fire. This is the entry of the spiritual beings into this planet. And then when they took on the physical forms, now if you look back into Egypt, when they took on the physical forms, because everything to do with Phi and the pentagram is first taking place in Egypt. This is why it says that they were given a grotesque look. The dinosaurs were on this planet for 150 million years. You can't refute it. You can't argue it. It's right there. You can't say, oh, somebody's putting dinosaur bones everywhere to trick us. It doesn't work like that. So 150 years worth of what would be considered a grotesque form for the beings that were yet to evolve into humanity. Millions of years later. Look how long it really took. Then other essences were born, and this, like the mammal. Now this becomes very important to understand, because you could get lost here about where some of these animals came from, but you have to understand the story of the dog. The story of the dog is that once the dog was a wolf, and because it starts to trace all the way back into lions after a while, you realize that the dog, the lion, the wolf, the felines, all these entities are coming from the same source. I have a little sidebar here just to make this very clear. If you notice the cat has a feline's body but serpent eyes. Lions don't have the same eyes. The felines don't have the same eyes as cats, because they had already revealed that the Egyptians crossbreeded, not domesticated, but crossbreeded the snake with the lion and made what we see as on the composite level as a cat, but what is it on a spiritual level? Because it's carrying a lot of prana. So that's what I mean about taking a deeper look into the world rather than getting lost in the dream that has no meaning. The dream that has no meaning is all this extra stuff that the world keeps feeding that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. That's what actually clouds the dream. If you start to look at, because remember, negativity or illusion cannot exist without positivity. So this means that there's positivity somewhere. You just have to become good at cycling positivity out of negativity. Basically finding what's real in the illusion. And you can do that really easy by turning off what's fake. And then what remains is the vista and the expanse of what's real. And just a little bit of that, because it's concentrated, will get you a long way. So I'm asking you today to start to take a deeper look into the reality, to ignore at times the dualistic nature of just stopping. I'll just show you this. This is what's happening with most people when they think of whether a person's right or wrong about what they're talking about. The reality becomes is that when we do that, we stop our mind from thinking for a moment. And then what we fail to realize is that if we've already scanned the person that we're listening to, it's important to let the mind continue to flow with the information. And the reason is because when you begin to visualize what's being said, rather than to listen to it, which is where your filter is, it's like I'm listening. But when you begin to visualize what's being said, then you can see how all this is put together, and you can see a deeper version of what I'm explaining. So I want you to understand that there is a group of people in this world that we call the 5% that none of what we're explaining applies to. And in many cases, we make up that 5%. But on the greater whole, or our mass, most of what's being discovered is calculated on what the masses is experiencing. So sometimes if you can say, well, that's not true, but it's still coming from an authentic source, it generally means because it applies to the masses, not to the higher state of intellect in which you are currently in. But still remember, you have to come and cycle your energy. So I'll show you again that the physicality is feminine or female. But last show, I didn't get the opportunity to finish off my complete explanation about the female. And many people got off the line thinking, well, I guess it's the women then. No, all of flesh is female. Everyone knows this in the occult world. The spiritual world is masculine. The physical world is female. So whether you're a male or a female in a physical body, you're still, quote unquote, female. Passive. And the reason is because we receive energy from the sun. And that makes us receptors. So when someone is giving you something and you have to take it, or you choose to take it for one reason or another, mainly because of the stage that you're in, you become passive. You become a receiver. So then some people say, well, I don't need the sun then. Well, then you'll get a chance to see why you're not prepared to live without the sun. But also understand the master knowledge is that you need to understand how to do that though. How do you live without the sun? You become it. Then the logical step should be that you already are it. It's just dormant. There is a lot of dormant abilities of what we are within us. So what your quest becomes is unlocking these abilities, and that's really what the crown of the Magi, as I said, I was going to explain that just a little bit. The crown of the Magi was really about, even though it's been changed, in the center of the crown of the Magi used to be the man's head, and then on the top used to be the serpent, then the bird, then the lion, and then the ox. Because it symbolizes certain states of our consciousness where we have yet to reach. If you notice, the predators of our reality, and the human is more than a predator. It domesticates, etc. The predators of the reality do not have to generally worry about a great deal of what the ones who carry the burden for the reality have to worry about. So we know that the serpents and the lions and the birds are the predators. Not all the birds, but some of the birds now. But the ox carry the burden. We know that the bird is in the sky, but the serpent is on the ground. We know that the lion commands respect from everything and is symbolized by the sun. So when you roll all of that together, what you get is the actual human. And that's why it's card number 21, and it means the universe, because the human is the universe. And the goal is to bring all these energies into balance, to lift these animal souls, where they're off of you and into their next state of existence, because that's what they're here. They're learning the lesson. What do you think some of the beings that are the closest to becoming humans next are really doing? Observing humans. The cats observe humans. The dogs observe humans. The rest of the beings that are below that have their own status of when they're actually becoming. So it's basically like you're working in the field. And that's what a great part of our existence is really about. And then it becomes time for us to raise our consciousness into a higher state, because it starts to become too dense for us. And that's what most people are experiencing now when they look at the reality. They now have a certain level of knowledge and they say, well, we could be doing this. Why aren't we doing this? And there becomes a certain level of frustration with what's taking place in the world and why spirituality hasn't acted out on this world in order to correct it from its ways. And it is. Like, that's what this is actually about. This is about now the information of exactly how this thing works is coming out. Now, if you notice in the Bible, the two most important individuals are Jesus and Moses. Jesus and Moses both end up in Egypt right away as children. And because Egypt is the symbolism of the underworld or the physical world, then we can see clearly there what it's saying is that the highest souls are going to go through this. They have to go through this. There's no other path for them but this. And the easiest way that you can tell if you're one or not is if you're human. That's it. Because if you've been chosen to be human, the only thing that they said was the issue is that the spirit still has to deal with the animal nature. It cannot be determined what's going to happen. So if you got mole people, you got snake people, you got bird people, you got ox people, but you infuse them all with the spirit, each essence of the energy of the actual flesh changes the spirit. So this becomes interesting but it all still maps up, meaning that people get into the body that they need to be in. There's no injustices being done. But still the fact remains that when one incarnates into a body, it's still yet to be determined of whether or not they can handle the power that they've been given, because you're sitting on a powerhouse. Like, the body has all the equipment to take you beyond. Things that can't even be discussed in this language. Essences and energies that are completely foreign to this species of man, but are far more advanced. Thinking of just simply of existences operating on different geometry that are millions of years ahead of our technology, as we're calling it. The organic levels. This is where the seeds of what the earth is just a seed of that. That's how far it really goes. And that's why I've had some very humbling experiences in the altered states of consciousness, because the vista of existence spans out so much more broader than what we are able to see with our own eyes. You should grab this BBC video. It's called The Speed of Light. Get the exact title here. And it's very important to see this, because I'll put it up later on. But what the video actually shows is that it shows just how much the eye cannot see. And in many cases, they've slowed the film down using these cameras, and there's so much other stuff going on. You realize that that dense frequency that we're carrying is also the main reason why we can't see certain things. And also, that's why I boosted up on the Ethereum Gold now, because I had an opportunity to meet the owner of the Harmonic Enterprise company, and he was explaining that after 2 weeks, you have to continue using, because most people think that it's like a drug or something, so they want to feel it every time they take a pill, but the overall electromagnetic frequency of the person's body continues to increase and stay stable. And in this type of reality that we're living in, with so much of that bombardment going on, it's important to be able to stay into a fixed frequency in order to be able to focus. And so this is going to get really expansive. Like, there's so much more that I have to share here on today's conversation. I'm also going to go ahead and take a moment here to regather the notes and things of this nature, and then we're also going to take some calls at the end of the show, or towards the end of the show. But I just want to let everyone know that the most amazing thing is overcoming. And the main thing about this chakra is, in the studies of the chakras, is it shows you the energies that are attached to when your chakra is closed. And one of the main things that's attached to when the Swadhisthana chakra is closed is the seclusion. And this often plagues a great deal of us that start to branch off into higher levels of knowledge or altered knowledge that is different than what the reality is ingesting. And there becomes a heavy level of seclusion. But you have to realize that the entire plane is populated with life, and everything is orchestrated waiting for your tone. It's another level of connection that we're establishing here that exists with people who meditate all day, people who breathe all day. Even now, my breathing has gotten to a level where I don't have to sit down and say I'm going to meditate. It's like my breathing is always the reverse breathing in the diaphragm. So thus, I'm really always in the meditation, and thus always accessible. And through that connection, we saw the connection with the resistance, and people exclaiming that at the same time posts were made that they were having the same idea and thinking about wanting to know the same thing. So this is where that seclusion becomes dissipated, because you connect in with an organic network of individuals that have very powerful minds, bodies, and souls. In order to gain a powerful mind, body, and soul, and I would again highly encourage people to stay away from the fear-based stuff. The reality becomes that a person cannot, as a negative entity and a very distorted type being, cannot maintain into the frequency of the individuals who have their frequency balanced. So just from that level alone, there is nothing to really be afraid of if your frequency is balanced. It means that you don't have to be afraid of me if you're carrying a balanced frequency. And the most important thing also that I was told the other day, I was headed to the gym, and I was humbled immediately of the intelligence of the life forms that exist within our universe. But they showed me very easily within our torsion field how when we become too inner in certain areas, we poke out in others. And how this manifests is that if we don't live balanced lives, meaning that you can't stay in a room all day, you can't be in there just on your bunk all day, you have to balance it, because then what happens is in the dream world, you're overactive. And then the overactive dream world is clouded and sometimes not able to be controlled. That's how the body acts out what it's missing from the physical reality. So it's important for you to understand how to keep those balanced and how to morph the external reality into what you want it to be by working internally, but not spending so much time internally. It's almost like you're holding your breath. You have to breathe in and breathe out. And so that is what takes you out of the seclusion. Another thing that's related to this chakra when it's closed is confusion. And the confusion has really come due to the dualistic misinterpretation of the ancient knowledge. And that's what we're dispersing now with the understanding. So this is the time where the greatest amount of confusion is now put to ease, because much of, and we're going to go over all of this stuff, like eventually I'll be on Islam. Eventually I'll end up covering all the religions just to clear up the mythology, the political agenda, the different things that were inserted into a universal teaching of basically get yourself into a higher state of consciousness and then come back and share what you learned with the people who are still in what you're calling the lower state of consciousness, but when reality is just a place to go. That's what you need to understand, is like all of this stuff was a gift to give us places to expand into. Things that it's basically like someone giving you something that's already built. And that's the most important thing to remember, is about life is still a gift. Whatever you're experiencing in life, if you've come to a conscious level to move away from your instinct, then at that point you can automatically put a smile on your face because something is shining on you. If you've been endowed with reason to be on this line, then something is definitely shining on you. So that's where you take that path and you go to the next level with it, and that removes the confusion. The overindulgence, which is another part of this chakra when it's closed, comes in part because we sometimes, in not understanding the vista of our consciousness, we focus on one chakra and then we overindulge on what corresponds to that chakra. This gives us an actual brute force way of eliminating overindulgence because we start to explore other chakras that have entirely different essence and senses to them. And I want to tell you that it's very interesting as far as the different feelings that accompany when your energy is in the seat of another chakra beside your root chakra or your navel chakra, etc. You can still feel, like for instance in your throat, a throbbing and a tickling feeling that has another higher sense to our centers. And so think of that at times when you may be exerting yourself too much in one particular area, in one particular chakra, to gain more things to allow your energy to cycle. And that's also, again, it talks about overstimulation. Know the peak and remain at the peak is the key to overstimulation. Overstimulation is basically like a gambler that doesn't know when to get up from the table. He's already won, everything is over, and then he's still betting and then starts to lose. This is what's called overstimulation. It's important to understand when to push off. Like, I've had enough of it. I kind of sum this up to, I think, of the James Bond movie, the title is The World Is Not Enough. And this is when, at times, the physicality of this plane, which is, again, related to the pentagram, and its combustion levels and how it can cause energy and drawback is enticing to the kind of beings that we are. They say the gods always want to act out. They feel like they must do something. And so the physicality gives them a way to do that. So you have to realize that a great part of the overstimulation comes from overpeaking. If you pull away from the table when you've experienced something, it's great, but you know you should not go any further because it's an overindulgence. Then you begin to train your body. It actually humbles the body and disciplines the body immediately, almost as if, again, it's very similar to training an animal. The body, it's very interesting to watch it because it has its own thoughts, and those thoughts sometimes become a person's primary thoughts. But you can also see the soul in there, which is far more wiser, instructing the body. And this is also why it says man's job is to lift up the animal soul, because what you're instructing is alive. It just needs an instructor, though. If you let it lead you, then it'll lead you to folly. And that's why what reason is the ability to say, I don't know if I want to do that. See, there's no, I don't know if I want to do that most of the time within animal instinct. And that's what they're learning. And also you could see how our life is entwined with that, because that's also what we're learning. So we're going to go ahead and take a brief moment here. It's on top of the hour. I'm going to see if there's any questions here, or if you do have any questions. Also, If you want to call in, the area code is 347-996-5688. We can put you on the universal current. You simply press 1 and you ask a question to your hardest, greatest desire, and I'm more than sure that it can get answered. So we're going to go ahead and take a 4 or 5 minute break here, and then we're going to come back to the second half of the show. And when we come back, we're going to get in more with that missing link. And we're also going to talk about how the pentagram distorted the appearance so that one could not recognize themselves. And that's why it's called sometimes like a mirror, where you look in the mirror, but what you see back is not really you. And so we're going to talk about that when we come back to the universal current. Forward, that's pretty high pitch. I don't even think the speakers could handle that for a moment. Okay, so it's excellent to be here, like I said, and what we're definitely going to be getting out through these next shows, I would say the last shows. Yeah, I guess the last shows of these kind, because I'm definitely ready to bring this to more of a video level that gets far more explanatory. I tried it last week. We had a little problem with our live stream. Let me know that we weren't exactly ready yet, but I will be hoping to change up the format soon. I also wanted to let everyone know, if they can, to get involved as much as possible. If you can contribute, to contribute. It does help us move a lot faster in bringing in this information and discovering this information. Just a few updates also on certain things. We did add 500 more books, and these are different books because these are some of the ones that I either held back because some of the authors had just published them, so I didn't want to infringe on their first week sales. And other ones, just stuff that I was wondering all the time if people were really ready to see. And now I'm just, there's no filter, so it's all there. I've just uploaded 500 books. Some of the more recent books that are uploaded to the Resistance Library are definitely stuff that you need to take a look at. Also, we did upload and link the symbols folder, and that's definitely some stuff in there. Some of those symbols you've definitely seen before. Even when the film strip starts, you can be like, I've seen some of that stuff. But then after a while, you're like, whoa, what is that? So take a look at that folder if you get a chance to. Also stay tuned for the excerpts folder. These are things that I've clipped out of books and things of that nature that you'll just never see explained again, and it's just right there. So I'll be getting that up soon. The goal here is to continue to expand. Somebody was talking about the other day that they invited someone to the Resistance, and I explained that I can't remember a day now that at least one person didn't join. So I suppose that the Resistance was up forever, everyone be a member of the Resistance. But genuinely though, it's been amazing the growth that we've been experiencing and how people are receiving the message, and just hopping on board from the mission, starting off basically with the code of the matrix, getting their dukes up, balancing out themselves, or cleaning off the canvas and getting ready to balance out themselves. And this has just been like a real-time progress of real spirituality taking place on Earth and our discovery of the universe. What's being brought forth is far more potent than the Resistance, myself and other members and even people that speak negatively about it. The reality is that where the world is going, whether people can accept it or not, has never determined whether it goes there. It's simply procession. And so you have to have enough knowledge to read the signs of the times and to understand what you need to do about it for yourself rather than being an observer. Sometimes we can get caught in the observer mode so much that we forget to come and act out. Remember, anytime you're trying to stay in one stage, it's like you're just either in one chakra, or you don't know how to cycle, or you're basically just polarized. You're stuck. And that's what it talks about in the ancient books, that where the standard human chakra center is upside down and locked. It's a wheel, and what it needs is it needs the energy to thrust up one channel and down another channel, and that in effect spins the wheels for the first time, and it's like a car kicking off. Like, I've even had certain instances where I've heard things that sounded like engines with the crankcase open. That's how loud it was within the body. We know that this potential within humanity, and this is something that I wanted to actually write down this morning. I forgot, so I'm glad I remember it now. But what it was about is that what we are doing to our bodies, because our consciousness shapes matter, is the transformation that is taking place with our spiritual faculties are being done by our mind over matter. So many people are experiencing a transformation within their ability by grasping a hold of the concepts and understanding what they really mean. It's very interesting to watch this work. And I was talking earlier about this documentary that I was looking at in regards to how the dog became domestic. But basically what it shows is that it was over a prolonged period of interacting with the humans that the dogs became domestic, and the domestication changed the way they looked because they became less ferocious. Some people think that you could take a baby wolf out of the wild and raise it and bottle feed it, and as long as you love it, it will be cool. No. They show that it does not work like that. It takes a long time for it to be, the instinct to be bred out in order for that wolf to not get to a certain age and then its instinct kicks in. But notice, a lot of what the animals are experiencing is also what humanity is experiencing. So there is this entwined relationship. Even I learned just the other day that the reason why snakes don't have legs anymore is because they chose to go underground. And that's why I believe there's a lot of advanced serpents that just live in the center of the earth, because they say legs are a hindrance if you live in the center of the earth. And also, it's interesting because the serpents they keep warm by the sun. Like they need to absorb the sun's energy in order to stay warm. Mammals keep warm based on what they eat. So their body basically has an internal combustion system. So this also could really be the difference between the internal and external parts of our nature and how they function. Like our more mammalian nature needs physicality. It needs material in order to keep warm, while our more serpentine nature needs heat and things of this nature coming from a solar source. And maybe that's why the soul and the sun and the serpent all got the same bag together. And so really what I'm looking into doing is just simply explaining this stuff from a non-biased bridging standpoint, because I talked about earlier in the show how there was a disconnection between a lot of people's forefathers and them because that biorhythm was cut when the mummies were desecrated. However, any physicality has a cycle, so it relives itself. There's a certain time delay, and then it connects itself again, just as like an arm that's severed on the astral dimension just grows back at a certain point. And so it's really about understanding that the connection that our forefathers, foremothers, motherlands, matrices, Mother Russia, Mother Africa, etc., that these motherlands, America, all of these pentagrams basically have brought forth through their wombs, and what it's all been about. And when you start to see it from that level, just the complexity, that also will remove the seclusion, because you realize that, first of all, that none of this stuff is not, like I said, orchestrated, but orchestrated not by the Illuminati, not by some individuals that are part of what looks more or less like a fraternity for making money that has a military behind it. We're talking about individuals that have already gone into the higher state of consciousness because they've seen all this was not but torment, meaning that the more deeper that you get entwined within the web of this reality, the more you have the potential for falling into sleep and going into the instinct of your animalistic nature. That's it. So beyond that comes this other being. And there's no limitation to how many we can keep bolting onto ourselves of who we are, because we're everything. So until we discover everything, then there's always something new to encounter. So it seems like to me that the most important status that you can reach is just to be balanced, to know how to take whatever it is that you're receiving and to be able to immediately adapt and not allow it to throw your system off. And that's why, again, the torsion field was showing that when one area is poked in, another one pokes out. So this means that going away from everything and everyone is definitely not going to solve the problem, because you're going to come out on another side and be that much more dangerous on that other side. And I've even talked to individuals, and we've talked about this, and what the seclusion does to the individual in the dream world and what it eventually turns them into and how they operate in the dream world. And so fantastic stuff. Like I said, we have a lot to keep releasing. We need that support. There's a lot of individuals that are a part of the resistance, but maybe, like I said, if you can't do it, still understand the complexity of the information and what it takes to actually put the information and deprogram the reality. If you truly believe in it, try it on them and see what they think about it and see if they'd be willing to come into this and assist and help, because the reality is that you've seen it for 2 to 3 years almost now. It's just me and a couple of individuals behind this pushing with everything that we have, and it showed to be more than enough. So on the spiritual plane, because we're now dealing with physicality, I suggest that we all start molding this reality into what we want it to be fast, in order to preserve our time that's needed to still discover more of what's here. This is just a real way of approaching it instead of backing out of it. Many people say, well, it'll happen. We can go with the flow. Let's just, whatever the creation wants. What the creation wants is for you to be completely off instinct. So go with the flow is completely instinct. So when you can start to adjust the balance and the rhythms and the weights and the alchemy and the morchemy with your body, your mind and your soul, now you can even be worthy of being communicating with a frequency that does that. You see, it's worthy of it means you're just on the same frequency, so it's your right. It's not something someone has to give you. You can earn it. That's what we're doing here. It's more or less the walls come down because we knocked them down, not so much as because someone had to open the door. And that's how we had to approach it now, because most of this knowledge that I'm speaking of today has been hidden, and the individuals who have even gotten close to it have been spun and turned around and confused within their own duality and hatred, because they've been siding with one religion, which all religions still are what a person dislikes. So we're going to take a call here from the area code 202. Caller, you're on the Universal Current.
Good afternoon. How are you, brother?
Oh, good day. I'm exceptionally well. Thanks for asking.
Just a straightforward question. Dream training. And as I thought about that question, I think about a mantra that I know when I'm in the dream, but I continue to go with the flow. Is there something how do you snap yourself bring yourself into the moment that, okay, I'm here and I should be looking for this, I should be doing that? Like a dream mantra almost.
Well, basically, first of all, just to talk about it like straightforward, the dream generally is only accessible for the individual that mentally they have the dream as their only access to something else. Meaning that to induce dreaming and deep dreaming almost does mean to completely seclude oneself from the reality. That's why darkness has a lot to do with being able to induce the dream state, because the darkness produces melatonin. Taking melatonin actually helps increase the dream state. But now we're talking about something back, so let me just give you the major points. There's also that in the physical reality, there's the ebb and flow of our life. If we have access to the dream world for a prolonged period, then all of a sudden our external life starts to basically not become active anymore. Now we have access to the dream world. There's not much need to go out of the world. Then at a certain point, it just cuts off. It's like the body saying, hey, go back to that world. The world of the person experience like, man, I can't get it in my dream. I can't program or anything like it. And then all the theories of why that's happening. So first try inducing like the brute force, the goggle, the lucid goggle, where it detects the REM and the red light shines, and then you can see that, and then you know you're actually dreaming, or etc. Me personally, what I've been doing is I just been like treating your dream world like the world is not enough. This attitude actually seems to get more progress when dealing with things that you appear to be stumped on. When you say, okay, just forget it then. You don't want to dream, don't dream. Just lay there. This is like this is also what this is the top of I am not the body. It's like at any moment when you're not getting the results that you want from just you, because you're the master of yourself, you forsake the idea. in a way where the body learns that, man, it was recommending something good. Because ultimately it is the body's liquids that are making all that stuff happen. The body is making the bridge, basically. And so when the body, for some reason of lack or overindulgence, doesn't want to create the bridge, then this equals you being able to gaze over there, meaning you could see the dream, but you can't control it. It was even like it had gotten so vivid the other night where I could see it, but I couldn't control it. Later on in the day, I reflected on the dream again, and then there was something in my mind that said, yeah, we were there. And you were there too, kind of, but basically meaning that you were there, but you weren't like able to control yourself. But we had a great time. Wish you had been more active. But it really, again, it comes from there's a few. It's like a tweaking thing, and that's why the body for each of us is more or less different. You have to kind of tweak it to, okay, is it because I'm exposed to too much light? The melatonin thing, like I said, is really, am I eating too late at night? And these are the different things that really do matter. But ultimately, like I said, when becoming completely frustrated, even after keeping the dream journal, I just backed off the dream. And this was also important too because I started to dream. I started to live there more than here. And this becomes a real problem. We're now a depth conversation because most people don't have access to the dream world enough to get submerged in it. Where it's
I only ask it because I fixed the mirror. A lady thought her mirror was broken. I said, here, it's fixed. And I fixed the mirror. And then there was a later part in the dream where I was sitting at, like, I call it the workers' cafeteria, where I was just explaining the, light and darkness are the same in a quantum, way of thinking. There's no separation and everything else. And I knew that people were looking at me, like, nodding their heads and everything. And then that was like the last segment I woke up, so.
I hope to one day get a more firmer map on what's going on completely in the dream world and maybe in possibly mapping it to expand because it's interesting how you have particular names for the places in which you visit and you visit them often. And I have at least 3 to 4 of these kind of places also. And I know other people have that kind of stuff going on. And it's interesting, some of the information that came across one of these secret portals, I guess we're like the WikiLeaks for occult knowledge, was that in one of these Illuminati meetings, they were telling them that when they see this particular sign, and they showed them this sign, that in the dream to take that door, and to never take any doors or portals without that sign on it. So this means, because we could just go and gander from there, that there's a way to even map these worlds. And there are symbols, but everything hinges. I tell you the truth. I went to a long conversation last night with a friend of mine from Zimbabwe, but in the end of that whole conversation, the greatest conclusion that was come to is that the biggest thing that we're missing that makes all of this make sense is our third eye. And because of that, much of what I'm explaining at times for a person who has not had a third eye experience, they have to amass a large amount of data to prove it. Now notice how one of our information centers is far more, the ability for it to learn and the speed in which it can learn is much more faster than the way that we're learning now. I'll show you. One experience with the third eye alters the consciousness to a point where the individual will never do and think certain things again. But if you use the lower centers, like let's say your brain that you use in school to try to learn something, it takes you several courses to learn something. That in one experience of the third eye can teach you everything that you need to know. So this is why it's so much more superior. Now, the key to the third eye, as we've talked about on several episodes, is definitely the dimethanol and the cassia. What I would encourage people to do now is to start to work with the berries, work with the barks, and just making teas. Not going into the complete experience itself because it's really too strong for even the adept if they don't know what they're looking at. It really becomes more of being able to get certain kinds of things in your body so that your body becomes familiar with it. And that's why ayahuasca works a lot better than DMT for individuals that are wanting to have a spiritual transformation within their life. The DMT is like the limitless drug from the Adjustment Bureau.
I've noticed that ginger root, a small piece of ginger root, or maybe a piece of ginger root in the morning and garlic throughout the day, like catapults me. Ginger just sets me off. So I have noticed that much.
Yeah, these are still still subtle bodies in dream, somewhat of the dream states. But again, the actual thing to grasp it and to bring it into this reality, because all I think is happening is that if you're looking at a dream and you open your eyes, you can't see that dream anymore. When the third eye is open, if you close your eyes and you see one thing, and then if you open your eyes and you look at the reality, you see it responding like it's alive. So I believe that the only thing that is different is that somehow, as they say, the eyes capture at 150 frames per second, I believe, something like this, but very slow. When you're using this third eye, it captures more frames. So thus, you're able to see completely across the bridge. And it's very interesting. That's all I would say. But I already wrote in my notes here, in 2 generations, this will be all the world is doing. Like, I swear. Like, watch what I say, because it answers all situations, meaning that spirituality is the solution, because the solution is the sun. The sun is giving off a photon code. The code is programming the reality. It's programming it so fast because of vibratory frequency that we're actually on. We experience it as it's happening. Then on top of that, we're actually making it happen because our energy goes to the sun. Like the sun is absorbing all the energy.
I've experienced that this last week because I needed something bad enough. Sun gave for a minute, and I said, prosperity is what I need. I needed it to manifest, and I watched it manifest within a minute. So
they say that basically it's perfect at cycling the energy. Like basically that's why it stays bright and it's able to just hang out like that, is because it's completely balanced. And that kind of makes sense, because even if it was just machinery, it would have to be on complete balance in order to just keep going like that. And they say, so how it does it is that the amount of light that it pulls, it gives that amount of light back. But it distributes it in a cycle. They say the cycle, I believe, is 11. But this is the very interesting stuff about when you get deeper into how this whole thing is really wired together. And so what these so-called secret societies have done, the ones that have proclaimed their secret societies now, this is what I've actually watched happen. The reason why some of these orders have these fabulous stories about what they've been able to do, even though they have really no information about how to do that, is because they were solely recruiting and bringing people in based on what people thought they could do, not what they could really do. And then every time a person asks, well, what about that? Which was the whole reason they got in. They would say, oh, you kind of have to wait until you enter into this degree, because then you can know that information, because it's a secret. You see how desirable it is for you. Imagine how desirable it is for others. So basically, they're really good at slick talking, but never telling the people that they understood the animalistic nature of our reality. And every animal has something, like if you watch in nature, if you even watch the serpent in nature, the female serpent only gravitates around the serpent that has the largest hot rock. So this means that if you put that in this text of this reality, and then you somehow turn the people into operating on the R complex of their brain, this means that the female of the species will only be concerned with the individuals that have a material gesture of wealth. So, or heat or warmth. But to understand our reality, to stay out of duality, if we're all looking for warmth, what's the first 3 words in the word warmth?
War.
So that combustible energy of this whole place that we're sitting on prevails. And that's why they say this thing is like a bull, because it'll buck you off. The moment that you think you understand how it works, then you get its opposite side. And if you can't hang on for the next positive side, then you're not cycling. And so that's where I believe that dream that we've been dealing with at times, that is really this one. Like, this is the one where it went so deep in, we forgot who we were. Because I'm telling you, the human being, this is what I've been able to discover within the last 3 weeks. That's why I'm so easy now, meaning that my yoke is really easy, my burdens are light, because something way more advanced is looking at every single point of this. Now, you realize that over time through most things, but after a while, it starts to really sink in. And I'm telling you, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, just from the sheer amount of coincidence, synchronizations, etc., it showed me clearly that whatever created all of this is here now. It may not have been here 5 years, 6 years ago, 7 years. It may have been close, or it may have been there but not doing anything. But right now, it's waking up and taking an extreme interest in the next progressive level of humanity, because that's why the Revelator is coming through the land. The energy that's actually coming through the land right now is called John the Revelator. It's when the energy of John from the island of Patmos writing Revelations and what brought the state of the churches or the 7 chakras into upheaval. These are the 7 nations in the tribes that are from around the earth, and you see that they're becoming uneasy all over the place. Like, this is the first time we've ever been able to turn on the news, and everywhere there's rioting and the people are upset, and they don't even know what they want. They just want action. Now, that's comet behavior. Like, anytime you have those kind of portents coming across, and that's why I said, behold, I broke the 7th seal. It's because when you look at that speed of light video, what you see is that when there's a huge something that throws out a lot of air, like a comet or explosion, it breaks it breaks shields, basically. And these shields, I'm connecting to the seals. And once these seals start to get broken, then all of the corresponding nature, and that's why we can probably pull apart what they're calling the plagues, but are really symbolic gestures for certain things, like if it's the bees, if it's the frogs, etc. And if you understand the zoomorphication of the Egyptian and the hidden text of the Sumerians, then you can see what animalistic nature they're talking about is about to thrust itself forward and rain upon the earth. And so then you can adjust yourself, because where it's actually raining is inside of you. That becomes the key. So if you can wrestle it down and subdue it, then you graduate from that gate. And then you become aware of another reality. And because the way the earth is built, you can actually go to an entirely different place and live in an entirely different reality, disconnected from the one that you were previously in. It allows it to be possible based on what the person chooses to do. As long as they don't fool around and misunderstand what all this stuff means and imagine they're supposed to be someplace that's so far off that they can't even get to it. That's the Satiloka concept, like staying in such a high chakra in your brain, but you're still living in physicality. You better come down here and get some food. Like, it's about cycling the energy. And so that's the great part about this. So hopefully I got a chance to answer all your questions, brother. As always, greatly appreciate it, and I'm not going to stop. Thank you. Oh, man. Great. So we're going to go ahead and take that next caller. We want to thank the brother for calling in. Caller, it's OK Para 13. You are on live with the Universal Current. Wholeness.
Hotep, brother. What's interesting through all of this, as you share about the laws of the opposites or the dualities of nature, that our ancestors had put the symbols that we recognize through the various religious symbols, that they're all based on the laws of the opposites, or what expresses the symbols of balance, from the Ankh to the Star of David or the double pyramid, to the Crux Ansanta or the cross, to the Yin and Yang or the Tao symbol, to the double square, to the crescent moon and star. All of them are balance or harmony symbols, or based on the laws of duality. And once we get back into understanding that, and that was a beautiful thing, that when our ancestors had created this, they always left something for us to reflect back on in order to bring us back to the center. That was the purpose of the hieroglyphs, or the medunete, that it was put in stone, because that way it would not be erased over a period of time. And that when it got too close to the point to where things appeared to be disappearing, that we would always come back to the center. You know, and that's the beauty of it all. And our eyes are now opening. The pineal gland is opening to many of us. And what goes up, of course, well, it must come down. But what goes down, has been down, is now coming back up. And the understanding of things to correct it, there's always chaos before order. That's also the laws of nature. I express it from the standpoint of a volcano eruption. It will destroy everything in its path in what may be perceived as being negative. But once the dust settles, It brings forth newness of life, and that life is stronger than even what it was in the past. It now takes on a new reflection of life and its growth and its development, and it's what we would call the evolution, all getting to the point to where we eventually see ourselves as who we truly are, as gods. That's what the purpose of the building of the Sphinx or the god Harmachis was all about. You have the bottom portion, that of an animal, and you have the head of a man or a god, that evolution from one place to another. The sole purpose of us, too, is to make sure that we preserve those elements and qualities of nature. The elements being the air, the fire, the earth, and water, in which we're in the center of that square. All four parts make up who we are. And the qualities of nature being hot, cold, wet, and dry, also based on the laws of the opposites. When we get to the point to where we recognize truly who we are, then all the chaos that we are going through right now will then come to order. Thank you and peace.
Thank you. I definitely don't know any more we can say to that. I mean, that was beautiful. I do appreciate you sharing that with us, especially in light of what's been talked about on today's show, brother. I mean, to me, it's the experience in itself, and to be a part of it that is, it's amazing. It doesn't even have words to it at this point. I mean, and I know that. No, go ahead.
And my name is Akpara Nosekera. I am also one of many who have gotten to the point to where, as they say, the truth crushed the earth shall rise again. And so we're all at this point to where there's been so much chaos in our world. And again, it's also a part of nature, because nature is, as we know, that all four elements are living entities within themselves. We don't know and we don't understand that, because we really have been brainwashed into thinking that we are the all in all, and not thinking that everything around us is alive just as we are. And that when we get to the point of getting past the confusion, then we will see things happen that will correct themselves. One of the things we truly have to examine is a concept called culture. Culture is really a figment of one's imagination, because we create cultures and build societies based on our needs and wants. How we want to look, how we want to speak, how we want to believe in things, how we treat our children, how we treat our elders. All these are significant factors in creating that balance and that harmony and peace. But as much as there are those that are conscious, there are also those that are unconscious. And even those who are conscious have a choice of dealing with the consciousness from a positive or a negative perspective. And those who are conscious and that choose to deal with it from a negative perspective are those who want power and control in order to monopolize the system of what we call life, and control it to the extent to where they benefit on this earthly plane. So the conscious ones are now rising up. And again, like I said, there's always chaos before there's order, but the order is now coming into being, because we are the part of the universe that has to bring about balance. And thank you, brother. Peace.
Thank you, brother. And so with that being said, I definitely wanted to also add that definitely a lot of the symbolism about the balance that is to return to our reality is coming to fruition. And it's all of those opposites that are discussed that are actually what has been powering this with us. And so it actually gives us a reason and a purpose. Like, there's no reason to even teach if everyone already knows. There's no reason to do when it's already been done. And we get a chance to run the path that our ancestors insisted that we have to run the gauntlet. We have to do the right. And we have to experience it like they experienced it, and then make our full procession. It's not something that really can be given. It's more something that can be earned. And I've just been really watching the because there's still a certain amount of people that are involved in these kind of conversations, but I've been watching how, again, the resistance started in a dualistic phase and was able to show how we can bring it back into the collectiveness of just getting more deeper into the reality. But the main thing that I've definitely discovered is the vista is far more expansive. It's like even when we say that we're going to join back with it, even the comprehension of what it is an experience. And that's what we're being calibrated for, is to open up more of the faculties that are associated with us experiencing, which are already here with us. And it was interesting because today's show, when we really look at the chakra, the navel chakra, it has a lot to do with Earth, and it has a lot to do with when the gate is closed, like we talked about, the seclusion, the confusion, overindulgence, overstimulation, living in dark places. This is, when you really think about how Earth is set up, this is what it's really bred itself into being, because it's just simply closed. Now that it's about to open, and I believe that that's what I noticed with the way that it's choosing to teach us this. Like, I don't believe there's anyone here that's controlling what's going on. The greater beings are mastering this whole thing. If a man thinks that what he's doing and what the decisions he's making are somehow outside the guidelines of the Most High, then that's foolishness. Like, a man is only cheating himself when he cheats. So the reality becomes is that they put the whole thing together so that all of the components that would be necessary to teach whatever lesson you really want to learn. Some people are starting to really get into it from a level like, okay, well, let me take more courses. Why some people are just saying, well, I'm not even ready to join up for the school. And so I believe that this has been going on, from my understanding, for at least 60 million years on this planet, of successions of teachings from whatever the sun is to this planet, through its information that it's seeding this planet with and the entities that live here. And then that still connects more to expansive universes that are all linked up into the same kind of chain. So when I can just think of a planet that is 60 billion years old, which is what they say Earth is, it's almost like we only live 72 years. Who am I to say, just on my physical plane, and the first time I have recognition of myself, 72 years versus that time span, whether I'm a young being or an old being. And many have taken this, even the Egyptians and what they bought. We can't say how old they were, but we can definitely say that they're older than us. But what I've been seeing is now that we've grown to understand what they were doing, especially with the geometry, is I've seen they moved on to higher geometry, for better lack of words. Like, again, this plane and the energy that's coming across it and the frequency that is on is now able to be looked at by us when it was not something that we could do not too long ago. And so now that we've gathered that information, it's starting to connect with many other things, but mainly what it says is that this is one of the more dense states or inferior states of where our consciousness really resides, which is still with us all the time. And when we choose to live in a certain center, then we experience everything that corresponds to that center. And I still see a gap in the consciousness where some just want to live in a higher center. Few are thinking about going through the centers continuously, because it's like actually agreeing to completely work for the universe. Versus, I want to work, then I want to break, and I want to stay in this chakra. And so that's, I think, all this stuff we're learning right now, it's our exclusive lesson within this little 72-year lifespan, plus the age of our soul and the mastery over our animal nature, and to completely do ourselves the justice of absorbing all of this. I believe that's what the conclusion of this is our balance becomes the key. It becomes the key to opening that door. Mm-hmm. Because everything on that other side is balanced. That's how it's able to maintain its non-chaotic state.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I try to get people to understand it. Those who cannot understand the esoteric perspective, then I take them to the biological perspective. And that is, you have millions of sperm cells that are in the testicles of the male. Each of those sperm cells are individual spirits that race through the penal shaft of man, competing against one another to get to the egg, to come into this place called life. And in ancient times, once coming into life, there was responsibility of the child to go through the educational system or the mystery system to know themselves. Astronomy and astrology had played a major part as far as our ancestors, because they knew that through the 12 months, or the 12 signs that we call the zodiac, that everybody has a different rhythm based on the time that they are born. And it was based on the rhythm they were able to determine what the strength was of that individual. And based on the individual and their strength, is they were then put in positions of leadership in order to govern our people into knowing and understanding themselves. Thus the purpose of putting above the lodges and temples in ancient times, know thyself.
And know thyself it is. And I guess that has been the tune for the last 2 to 3 weeks, is definitely the key to all of this, is to know yourself, know your rights. And I guess in the conclusion of this is also to know that you're everything. We have one more caller, brother. I do appreciate you calling in. I'm going to go ahead and take that call from the 972 area code. I also do appreciate you sharing those well-spoken words with us to bring all of this into collection, especially with the youth, because they definitely need to hear that peace, that strength, and that comfort that comes with your voice. So I do appreciate that too, Okapara.
And thank you, brother.
Okay. Caller from the 972 area code, you're on the universal current. Tell me you got one of those crazy questions we can close this out with. Okay, maybe the caller didn't know that they were going to be on the air. Caller from the 972 area code, you're on the universal current. Okay, so that caller was not ready to pick up the line, so we only have about 2 more minutes in the call, so we're going to go ahead and close this out by definitely, I just want to say to everyone, thank you for being here. We're going to continue to move up through the chakra center. We're going to continue to reveal some of the ancient knowledge and some of the new knowledge that has come to us, and the collection of all of the exemplary help we've been getting from the universe in figuring this out. I wanted to say thank you to all the individuals that support with their time and support with their effort into the resistance site and into just helping individuals understand what's happening here. I would like to let everyone know that regardless of whatever is happening, that we're all in this together, and there's people and beings that are more than equipped to deal with the situation that Earth is facing. I would also like you to look at the situations such as the Occupy Wall Street situations as anytime you see that kind of energy, as the brother is saying, the chaos and then the order. But in this case, the order is more like an organism. It has nothing to do with V for Vendetta, totalitarian type state. It has more to do with the full conservation of our energy in order for us to become complete generators, to be able to become dynamos in our life and in our spiritual sector so that we can power up all our vehicles. And I just wanted to also say that I'm going to do my best here, especially within the next week and as we speed towards the crown chakra, to give people all the information that's necessary on how to activate that vehicle and how to be able to perceive what looks like the bottom of a pine cone, and which is becomes a field that you can definitely understand how to see other things in the reality. And so I wanted to also say, for those that have called in, if you could press 1, it helps with the ranking of this show. And I want to say wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, and we'll see you next week.